Okay. All right, there we go. I don't have a clapper today. Daily Art Adventure 907. I'll bring you in as close as I can. So this is my portrait of Nancy and Paul, good friends of ours, and I'm nearly finished with their faces. I thought I'd bring you in. I've been working on Paul for about the last maybe hour without your company. Can you believe that? Some nerve I have. But I'm done with him and want to do the same thing to her face that I did to his. Now, first thing I'm going to do is look at her face. That's always a good idea. Look at the portrait you're painting. I'm going to, and make a judgment. And that's way too much. I'm doing a very, very faint glaze on her face, essentially over the whole thing. I want it slightly yellower, but not nearly that yellow. So bear with me just a minute while I get. So I'm using liquid again. It's sort of borderline at this point whether I should be using liquid or a slower drying medium, but I think I'm safe going with liquid. The paint on this canvas is quite thin at the moment, so you don't want fast dry. Which liquid is fast dry, but you don't want fast dry on top of slow. That's the thing you want to avoid. Okay, so I'm giving her right now a very slight yellowish cast. I'll let you see the photograph at the same time for a minute here. Now, normally yellow, of course, would not be a color that we would think, oh yeah, we want to make our portraits yellow. And it's all relative, isn't it? Just compared to what she was, I thought, I looked at the photograph and said, she could be slightly warmer. So it's not pure yellow. It's a tiny bit, infinitesimal bit of Indian yellow and almost equal part oxide red, which of course is a brown, but it's an orange-ish brown, very close to burnt sienna. Okay, so I'm just doing this to get her close. Let me back up for those of you who haven't been perhaps watching me. Hello, David Mercer. Yeah, I'm glad to hear YouTube is good. Facebook, I tried and it was a lost cause. Isn't that strange? On Saturday, it was working great, and today, the battery, the phone, the connection disconnected like 6 or 8 times while I was trying to get going. That is so frustrating. Whew. Anyway, welcome, David. Good to have you here. I'll pull my reference down so you can see it. So here is my photograph of lovely Nancy. In fact, I arranged it so this print is exactly the same size as my painting. Okay, that took some work in Photoshop, right, to get this the same size as this. Not the other way around. I didn't paint this to match this. I printed this to match that. All right. And then once this was done, here was my extreme photomechanical trick for making sure my drawing is correct. Now, I hate, so to speak, I hate going to this level of technology, but sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. So that's what I've done here. So I've got the drawing, and I just checked it again just a few minutes ago. I had a question about the top of her lip, but I checked it and got it. Took a while to get it all perfect and said, nope, the drawing is perfect. Now, if I may, before I start doing what I really want to do, I'll continue, by the way. You're noticing after glazing her entire skin I'm now wiping it off. And again, I hear somebody coming through say, wait, if you're just going to wipe it all off, why'd you put it on? Okay, well, because I'm not wiping it all off, right? All right. So I would say at that point, right now, the way it is, I am quite happy with her skin tone, other than it's lacking a little bit in pops, lacking highlights. No problem. That's what this last stage is for. The other thing, however, let me put her face back up. The other thing is it looks exactly like her, except for some reason my painting, this might be easier to act out than anything else. She's a little bit too much like this. It's like she's over smiling or she's overexcited. Okay, here she looks happy and smiling, lovely. In my painting, it looks like she's going. Does that make sense? And of course, forgive me, she's a lot prettier than I am, thank God. But if any of you have done portraits, then you know this feeling. Because my drawing, quote unquote, my drawing is exactly correct. That is to say, my lines are all exact. Now, I've already had time to think about this, so I actually know what's wrong. And it's quite simple. At least one of the things that's wrong. This crease right here is too sharp. See how soft it is there? Let me zoom in again. See how, compared that to that, that's more punchy, right? So that I'm going to fix that. I don't have to redraw. I just have to soften it. That'll be easy. The other thing is, and I've looked at her top lip right here, and yeah, I'm going to shave that down just a tiny bit. That would be could be part of what is making her have that sort of a wild look instead of a calm look. Okay, I want calm. And then finally, the third thing is, and this is so extreme. The black of her eyelash, right here at the top of this eyeball. This one's okay. Let me restate this. The color of her iris goes up a little too high. And you guys, you can't even see that, I'm sure. But she has grayish brown eyes. And the gray brown in my painting goes maybe a 32nd of an inch higher than it does in the photo. So if I bring, which makes her eye open a little too wide, just a little bit too, a little bit too wide open. Okay? So, and then the question is over here, yep, the same thing, the white of her eye over here, which, and this is a lovely color, by the way. You can see it's not white. That can be popped a little bit, but the danger with whites of eyes, as you all know, is making them too white. So I'm happy that they're not too white, so I'm okay. But yeah, I need to take her eyelash down into her white. My goodness. In fact, her eyelash needs to be thicker right there now that I look at it. Well, let's do that one before usually most of these changes I'll be doing in the course of this final, but let's fix this one right now, okay? So here I am, tiny brush. So what I'm doing right now, I called this, as you may have noticed, I called this broadcast Sargentizing a portrait. And what I'm doing right now is not Sargentizing. This is the opposite of Sargentizing a portrait. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is making corrections, final corrections, other than her smile line. I'll get that. Okay, so I've made that change there. That looks better. By the way, here's a funny one. We can barely see the pink of her tongue, barely between her teeth. If in the painting, if you make that too black, it won't look right. So that's a real easy mistake, at least for me. I've made that mistake many times. Well, a few times over the years that I've noticed. Who knows how many times I've made that mistake and not noticed. But anyway, all right, let me put this my reference. I gotta there. All right, so my References up there. Now, I'm going to pick you up and let you see his face up close, because where you are right now, his face probably looks like it's pretty darn smooth. But when I bring you up close, you'll be able to see. Now let me look at my monitor. Whoa, that's okay, hang on just a second. There we go. All right, now I'm going to move you slowly, slowly. Are we still in focus? I'm hoping now that you're up close that you can see what I call, can I go any, I don't know if I can go any closer or not. How close can I go? Okay, starting to get fuzzy now, I think. All right, but at that range, at that distance, hopefully you can see what I call real brush strokes. Now that's a term I've come up with to describe my landscape painting, my cityscape paintings, which is, as you know, most of the time, most of my paintings are cityscapes. Hang on, let me get my wire. Get my wires unconnected. Oh boy. All right. Sorry for the roller coaster ride there. All right. So that you've seen it up close now. This face I have, quote unquote, air quotes, sargentized. This one I have not. Let me talk about this for just a minute. So the way, other than, like, just imagine that she has more highlights. That's a defect in her right now, but that's because I haven't done the last step. The last step is always mostly light. All right. Other than that, this looks almost exactly like a photograph. And he used to be like this. Okay, then the last hour or so, I sargentized. Now, what am I talking about there? I'm making a rather tongue-in-cheek reference to John Singer Sargent. Now, I could just as easily say any number of other great painters through history, but who's the contemporary? Begins with the letter Z, the contemporary of Sargent. Zorn. I could say I'm Zornizing, but fewer people would know who I'm talking about. So anyway, to sargentize a painting is to come in at the very late stages of the painting process and paint with a rougher stroke, so that, or what I call authentic paint strokes, or real paint strokes. And a real paint stroke is real simple. It's a stroke of paint that the viewer, not me the artist, but you guys the viewer, that when they look at the painting, they can say, oh, there's a paint stroke. There's a stroke of paint. That's it. You can identify. You can see the edges. You can see the texture. You can see the bristles. You can see the mark. You can see that a human being, much like myself, took hand, brush, paint, canvas, and went and left a mark. That's a real or an authentic paint stroke, as opposed to a William Bouguereau, which is what this looks like, a Bouguereau right now. Like everything just smooth, fuzzed out. Now, let's be honest here. As artists, there's a whole bunch of people out there in the world that believe, bless their little hearts, that believe that quality equals photographic reproduction. They would be happier, perhaps, with this than this, except that this has more. Anyway, well, that's part of the reason it has more pop, because I've sargentized him, but I haven't done that to her yet. So let's just be clear. There's a whole bunch of people who would say, oh, no, this is perfect. Don't touch it. Touch it. It looks exactly like her. And by the way, David, I hear you, buddy. And I'm just going to say, no, David, you're wrong. Nope. Thank you for saying, but take it easy. I'm gonna kick back just a little bit this time, and you know, okay. So a little bit more light, but it's all stuff like that. Anyway, bless your heart. You're welcome to make suggestions, but please understand that I'm not going to believe any of you. I'm not picking on David per se, but you know what? Of course, my viewers are more than welcome to say, maybe not with that tone of voice. You're more than welcome to say, his eyebrows too high, his whatever. But the chances of you being correct hovers around 15 to 20%. So just want to let you know, David, you're welcome to say that. And I'm saying this not for David's benefit, but for the rest of you who don't know who David is. And we've got a long history, and that's okay. He's used to me, and I'm used to him. But anyway, this looks like a photograph. And as some people would say, well, that's perfect, don't touch it. But I don't want that. I want this. And most people, now this needs some more highlights, but even so, this has real brush strokes in. All right, so let's stop talking and let's start painting. And I'm going to do quite a bit of color matching here. I'm trying to decide where to start. I mean, you know, I'll start in the forehead, the traditional, up at the top. And yeah, let me show you real quickly. I'll show you my, I'll show you my paint palette. There it is. That's where a lot of glare there, sorry. It's glass, so you can see I've already been mixed, and it will continue to mix all kinds of flesh tones as I try to match colors on her face. Oh, and the other trick, that just in case there's anybody new watching, because this is laminated in plastic, I can take my brush and go like that and see how close I am. And that shows me that I need a little bit more ultramarine blue. Believe it or not, I need a little more blue in that flesh tone. You know, so this is laminated, right? Did it myself. I have a $150 laminator that I bought. Okay, now it's too dark, so let me add some titanium white to that same mixture. When I can't see virtually, other than reflection, when I can't see the color, then I know I'm matching it. Whoops. Now it needs quite a bit more red. Of course, that means a tiny bit compared to what most people would think, but from an artistic point of view, it's quite a bit. All right, let's try that. Oh, that's close. That is so close. I'm going to add a tiny bit of white to that again. Titanium white, of course. Now, boy, that's close. Oh, a little bit more red and a little bit more white. So, very, very, very close. And I'm going to declare this to be close enough. All right. So now I'm going to put paint try really hard to leave real paint strokes on the painting. So this is what I call Sargentizing. Now let me hasten to say, I do this, and I don't always do it to all my portraits. Well, frankly, sometimes I do a better job of retaining authentic brushstrokes in the process of painting. In my struggle to capture her accurately, are you with me? In my struggle, work to get her accurate, I've ended up smoothing out all of her brushstrokes. So she's beautiful, looks like a photograph, but I don't want a photograph, right? Sometimes I do a better job, so I don't do this. But what I'm doing right now, I want to make sure that I'm clear. I am confessing, I am admitting my weakness. If I really was John Singer Sargent, I wouldn't have to do this. This is kind of like goes under the rubric of fake it till you make it. Okay, until I can paint better, till I'm a better portrait painter, this will just have to do. So again, trying not to do the blendy thing. Now, okay, so I started out by putting down a large area of color, and now I'm looking at the photograph a lot and doing subtle, very subtle tweaks. Basically, like I put a little bit of darker there and a little bit of lighter there. And up here, yeah, a little bit of lighter up here. Of course, it all makes sense because, well, actually, let me say this, it doesn't make sense. The light on these faces is challenging because, but, whoops, I had you on the wrong thing. Sorry, gang. All right. Okay, so you missed me doing some of that. I'm so sorry about that. So I did a color all over, then darker here, then lighter here, and lighter here. And warmer over here. So I'm basically have the same pile of paint that I started with. Here's my sort of my base color, and then I'm just adding other things to it. I added blue for over here, I added white for up here. Now I'm adding a tiny bit of oxide red. And again, for any non-painters who might be watching, oxide red is not red, it's brown. There are a number of colors in the artist's world that have funny names like that. That is to say, you would think that oxide red, English red, red, there's another one, red, related to English red. Anyway, you would think they'd be red, but they're not. So you just have to get used to that as an artist. Yellow ochre is not yellow, it's brown. God help the poor beginner artist who thinks that because the name is yellow, that it means it's yellow. It's a yellowish brown. Okay, don't put it in the row. Don't put it on your palette with your yellows. There's a good, I don't say that very often. You early journey painters, yellow ochre is not a yellow, it's a brown. Put it with your browns now, because otherwise you're mentally thinking, you're probably thinking of it as a yellow, and that will, I think, show you a curveball. Okay, that's better. I think that this color over here. Now, in this portrait, and I use this trick a lot these days, that I learned from Mark Carter, C-A-R-D, D as in Dan, D as in dog, Carter, Mark Carter. You can watch him if you don't know him. Quit watching me and go watch him. This trick of matching colors by putting, what you saw me do a minute ago, by putting the paint on the plastic and then wiping it off. All right, but at this point now, frankly, and I'm being a little dangerous here, so I'm leaving the Mark Carter technique behind, and I'm more painting by without instruments. It's a good, without, I'm painting by intuition, not so much now by slavishly matching the color. And that's what I did on him, and I'm quite happy. I will tell you, I'm quite happy with his face. Okay, let's be clear. I don't want to be, I don't know what the word is. I'll let you know when I'm happy, and I'll let you know when I'm not so happy. And you guys, if you watch my broadcast often enough, you get to hear often enough when I'm not very happy with a painting or some part of a painting. So when I am happy, I'm happy to tell you that. So now I'm painting, as I said, using a pilot analogy, I'm painting flying without instruments. I'm just looking at the photograph. And in so doing, by the way, whether I realize it or not, I'm very dependent upon the color of the light bulb that's over me. And I do not have an expensive Kelvin, was it 50? I forget what number it's supposed to be. It's a curlicue bulb. Actually, it is, but it's a curlicue bulb with a ball around the whole curlicue. Does that make sense? One of those new kind of bulbs. Let me give you a little bit of my 2 cents worth about the color of light. I find myself at odds with a great many painters who say you should use a daylight bulb, or I don't know, a true white bulb. North light, I mean, there's, goodness knows, there's a whole industry in the art world called North light art books. And of course that they named them that because of this universal belief, if you will, that northern light is the best light by which to paint. All right? And I've gotten, far be it for me to disagree with all the professorial experts who say, I just have one gigantic question for all the purists who say that we should paint, should be carefully, have our lights balanced to the perfect Kelvin number, which I forget right now what it is, 5800 or 5500. A Google search would tell me quickly what it is. Well, I would guess that about 99.9% of the people who are paying for our paintings and buy them and hang them on their wall are not going to have 5500 Kelvin lights shining on the painting. I mean, the number of people that would do that, a museum will do that. Oh yeah, you bet. So God help the museum that ever buys my paintings. They're going to say, what's wrong with this guy? He didn't paint with the right color light. I'm not holding my breath for a museum to buy my paintings. I hope you can figure that out. Anyway, so I think this whole preoccupation with the perfect North light Kelvin color of our light is ridiculous. Because nobody else on the planet, it's only a stupid artist inside our little art ghetto who are talking to each other and trying to impress each other about how smart we are. Everybody does that, but artists are no exception. It's only artists that are talking about this stuff, and everybody else in the world buys our paintings, sometimes even expensive paintings, and hangs them up in their office or their living room or wherever, and they never give a thought to the color of light. Again, unless they're a museum, right? All right, so anyway. There you go. So that's one of my rants for the day. Got one out of the way already, David. And while I'm doing that, as you can see, I'm trying to paint with, again, what I'm calling authentic brushstrokes. And an authentic brushstroke basically means you can see that a brush made it. I'm leaving the marks. I've told this story. Let me come up here into the socket of her eye. Yeah, there's a definite blue cast, and in this case, I don't think it's eyeshadow at this part of her eye. I think it's just light. What was I going to say? Something about brush strokes, and I forgot what it was. Nope, it's too blue. Now, since I sort of ragged on our art community a little bit, I'm going to rag on them some more. No, before, and then be nice. I'm going to be mean first and nice second. Okay, here's, first of all, put on your asbestos suit. Here's me being mean. This is just, goes under the general heading of human nature. And I don't know if you've ever had anybody, what's the word, expose to you this defect in humans, but I'm going to do it now. And that is that we all have this terrible temptation. Whatever our field of expertise is, if we have a field of expertise, we have it because we learned, studied, worked hard to achieve a level of expertise. And having done so, this is all human beings. I'll give some examples in a minute. Having done so, having worked our buns off, having worked our fingers to the bone, having burned the candle at both ends, having burned the midnight oil, having worked hard to be good at something, doggone it, we want credit. We want people to know we're good at something. And so, in order to do that, we begin using one of my favorite words is esoteric language. We begin using terminology, trade talk. We begin using code words. Everybody does this. And I think it's immature. I think it's counterproductive. Generally speaking, unless we're like in the shop talking to our coworkers who all know the talk, then it's okay to use code language. But that doesn't see our coworkers aren't impressed because they all did the same amount of work that we did. So here's a question. So because I said a minute ago that artists all want to impress each other about how smart they are. Well, okay, so I'm mixing pictures here. We want to impress each other about how smart we are, so we use the talk. We say, oh yes, and see, I would sound a lot smarter right now if I could tell you the exact Kelvin number. So see, if I'd known I was going to talk about this, I'd have looked it up, and so I would sound smart, right? That's the immature human impulse. I confess that I am subject to that impulse, like everybody else. Unlike maybe some people, though, I recognize it as a defect. So one question might be, well, you already said that it's only us artists who typically, and photographers, who go walking around talking about Kelvin numbers and so on and so forth. That most people are never going to give a flippin' writ, so to speak, about what color light they have on their painting. They just want it to look nice on the wall. All right. Some do, but 1 out of 100, I'm guessing. It's not a scientific estimate. It's just a guess. Well, the same thing might be asked about, yeah, but if most human beings are going to prefer this super smooth photographic realism on a portrait, am I really wise? Am I just painting this way for my fellow artists? And that is a very, very legitimate question. Okay, now did you catch that? Is it only us weird artists who prefer the Sargentized version? First of all, let me say that that's a legitimate question, and one that I ask myself. Now, as you can probably see, after having thought about it for a while, I thought, no, I don't think. By the way, I'm trying to match this color here. I'm going up on I'm close enough now. I don't think that's true. It is true that a lot of people will never get past equating photorealistic painting for good painting. That is to say, in their mind, the best painting is that which comports most accurately, imitates most accurately a photograph. But I think, and this is not a rant, this is a question. I think that among people who are inclined, by the way, I'm doing face tone all the way around here, and I'm trying to Sargentize it, but the color variations are so subtle, I can barely see the brushstrokes myself. But don't despair yet. Don't you despair, okay? Don't despair yet, because I'm not done. The strokes that will come up, show it the most, will be like this, the light stuff right at the very end of the process. I'm going to paint with my left hand just because it drives me crazy to do all my painting with my right hand. Here's what I think, and this is kind of a half-baked theory, but I hate to use the term mature, but okay, but I'm going to use it. Too late, I already used it. That among mature consumers or viewers or purveyors, experiencers, lookers of art, that impulse I mentioned a minute ago of preferring the photographic realism to painterly, I think most human beings, if they become the kind of person who is likely to buy art, by the way, and that's at least one factor, but if they're the kind of person, whether, like I can't afford other people's art, so I have very little art in my home. I don't even have my own art in my home because I can't afford it. That sounds funny. I'll just leave it there. Right? It's true. It sounds funny. That many human beings graduate from visually. They mature. And I'm going to continue to take a guess here. They mature from preferring photographic smoothness to preferring a more energetic stroke. And I actually have a theory, as you may know, I have a theory as to why that is and how that happens. Why does a person graduate from preferring, and very often it happens like within their lifetime, as teenagers or 20-somethings, they're really, really taken with photographic realism. And then as they mature, they begin, this is certainly my journey, as they mature, they begin to appreciate more and more and more the more energetic or authentic brushstroke approach. Now, by the way, here's this crease that was overdone, so right now I'm going to be careful to push it back just a little bit, diminish it a little bit. And my theory is, again, this is not a hill I'm willing to die on. I'm just proposing to you guys to think with me. I think, wow, how deep to get here. Again, this is not a rant. I'm just not irritated by this. I'm just guessing that as some human beings, anyway, get older, they simply become more sensitive. And I mean that in almost every sense of the word. And again, it's a half-baked theory, so I'm not willing to be crucified on this one or to be lined up in front of the firing squad for this theory, because I'm not sure that it's correct, but I think it is. That I'll take males in particular, because I've never been a female. A 20-something-year-old male is a little bit more likely to take a dare to walk across a steel truss of a bridge 30 feet above the asphalt with no safety belt. A teenage human male is a little bit more likely to take up skateboarding. And having taken up skateboarding, they'll take up, at some point or another, they'll take up faster skateboarding and or half piping or jumping. That's just sort of what humans do. Now, I know this gets combined with a whole, like, brittle bones and more accidents and stuff like that. But even without the accidents and brittleness of bone, as a human being ages, if they're a fairly healthy human being, which many are not, but if they're fairly healthy, they see a lot of pain in the world, and they tend to soften, I think. And like one of the phrases, one of the words that relates to this is, quote unquote, the human condition. As human beings age, they tend, not all of them, but I think this is a growth, they tend to develop a deeper sense of empathy with their fellow human beings. In other words, they become more sensitive. And so that something even as abstract as seeing marks made by a fellow human appeals to them more than a painting in which there are no discernible marks. Whew. All right, I've burned up about all the energy I want to burn up on that topic right now. I think I've made it enough of a point. And again, I invite your thoughts and feedback. That's me honestly trying to figure out why my experience is, and many others, that early in life we prefer photographic realism, but later in life many of us begin to discern and see depth, say in a Rembrandt painting or even a Van Gogh, as opposed to Bouguereau. As much as I love, and I do love and admire Bouguereau in his paintings. Anyway, like I said, I've burned up all the energy I want to burn up on that topic right now. Let's see what some of you guys are talking about. Hey Betty, yeah, about Northlight. Good, glad to hear I'm not the only one. Oh, and Kaz, I'm so glad to know that Andrew, I watch Andrew periodically, like him a lot, and I'm glad to hear that. And yeah, I've done very much the same thing. In fact, there's a warm light, here's a cool light. And we have eyes in our ceiling, down lights. That one over there is warm, that one over there is cool. Those two are warm, and I have southwest light coming through the window. So I'm in here. I think the lighting in this studio is fabulous. So that's good to know about Andrew Tischler. I'm glad to know that. I think probably Mark Carter probably makes a big deal about color. I'm not sure, can't remember. But one thing that he does do right, he does make a big deal about this, and I agree with him completely, is you've got to have the same color of light on your painting, on your reference, and on your paint palette, okay? You can't have a different color on your palette or on your reference. In fact, I'm cheating a little bit right now, so there, that's actually, oh, I'm sorry. The difference, I just took this and tilted it up like that, so it has even more accurate. Anyway, so Mark Carter does make a big deal about that, and I completely agree with him on that one. Oh, I know, I was going to tell you, some of you a while ago, I've mentioned this before, but again, Mark Carter, this is the Mark Carterism. He does a very clever thing, he says, with his students, his live students. He'll say to them, all right, the assignment today in live class is you're going to paint the worst portrait of your life. Okay, so he gets everybody sort of willing to do a bad painting. And then he says, all right, here's why it's going to be the worst painting you've ever done. And he leads him step by step. And every single stroke that they put on their portrait, they don't blend it at all. They just, like, I'll do it. Like, they just go, well, I'm already doing it pretty much, but they go just like that. And then they don't blend it. And most of us, we see the edge of that and we want to do this, like I just did, okay? And he says, no, remember, this is going to be the worst portrait you've ever done because we're not going to do any blending. Now, some of you know, some of you are ahead of me or ahead of him, or you've heard me talk about this already. Late in the process, late in the day, so to speak, of them doing, quote unquote, the worst portrait of their life, little by little, all the students began to realize that quite the contrary, they've just painted the best portrait of their life because they haven't blended any of their marks. And that's essentially what I'm trying to do here. That is, and again, that is essentially what I'm calling tongue-in-cheekily, I'm calling, see, I just cheated again, didn't I? I'm calling it Sargentizing, adding authentic brush strokes. And again, from your distance where you are looking right now today, you can probably barely discern, so you kind of have to take my word for it that there are in fact brushstrokes. Now, it's not very wild and it's not very Sargent-ish, really. It's very subtle, but still, it's better. It's getting better, and I'm quite tickled with his face, having completed having done this to him already this morning. I'm hoping to have the same degree of satisfaction with her. Now, I'll just add one more thing to this Sargentizing impulse. Whereas in the underpainting, I worked very hard to match with this trick, with Mark Carter's trick, painting on the laminated plastic. I worked very hard to get a perfect color match, right? And now I am not doing that. Now, you would hardly label what I'm doing right now being a color bravery, if I can coin that term. No one would accuse me what I'm doing right now of being particularly courageous in the color department. But the fact is, I actually am trying to exaggerate just a tiny bit the colors that I'm seeing in the photograph. And of course, that's fairly safe because, as we all know, the photograph is, as good as that is, it falls short on it when it comes to authentic color. So if I were looking at these dear people in real time as live models, my eyes would be seeing a lot more color than they are right now. So I'm pushing the color. I already did that to him. And every color, by the way, purple, pink, blue, green, grayish, greenish, bluish in his beard, blue on the top of his nose, pink here. And again, no one would look at this and say, oh my golly, that artist is so brave with his color. No, not quite. I admire people. I can think of one good dear old friend of mine, Doug Strickland, the local artist here in Raleigh, who really had that knack, really had a good knack in his portraits of being a little bit more daring. And it's a balance, too much daring, and it's like, becomes garish, becomes whatever, and that's okay if that's your calling, but that's what I'm not after anything like that. But just a tiny bit of bravery would be good. So right now I've got this stroke perhaps a little bit more orange than it ought to be. Ought to, in the sense of comping the photograph, right? Oh, by the way, I suppose you've figured this out already, but one of the advantages or safeguards about working the way that I'm working, that is, nail it down first, get it perfect first, and then come back and add brushstrokes, is of course at any point if I begin to lose a detail or a feature or an edge or a likeness, I just wipe it off and I can go back to what's underneath, which is dry, of course. So what I'm doing right now can't be done in an alla prima portrait, right? This is predicated upon the notion that the underneath layer is dry. So there's obvious. I'm assuming you understand that there's a real big safety net here, because if I start losing, as I said, an edge or part of a feature, and I get worried about it, because I was quite confident with the placement of all my marks and lines. Now that's bad. That was just a bad stroke. I should also add, shouldn't I, that this notion of sargentizing a painting, that assumes that the marks, the brush strokes that you're leaving are pleasant marks, or what I typically call interesting marks. Okay? Yeah, right. Of course, goes without saying that they have to be. Here I am blending. Chicken. Just call me. Is my head right in your way? Yeah, almost. I'm doing some of the highest highlights right now. But almost, that's way too bright. Sorry. I'm apologizing to myself. Part of me is apologizing to the other part of me. Well, that's brave, all right, but it's just, no, that's too much of a good thing. So I'm going to try not to obliterate all of what I just put down there, but I am going to push it back just a little bit. Now I will, by the way, now when I finally get to the highlights, I will tell you this is the part of the portrait painting that is really fun. This is the fun, the bright spots, and it's what I've already done on him, but maybe after doing her, you never know. I might go back and say, wait a minute, I could push his highlights a little bit more. It's always fun when that happens. And typically what happens is I put down a mark that I think is a highlight. It's like, whoa, that's bright enough, that's light enough. And then as I continue to add more highlights to the rest of the painting, I come back and revisit my earlier highlights and go, oh, wait a minute. I could push that. I could push that more. Like right now, that cheek, that looks perfect. But it's possible that after I have done more highlights, I might say, oh, wait, that should be actually lighter. So once again, I'm trying to not only push color, exaggerate color. Ever going to paint with my left hand because it can drive myself crazy. It really does drive me crazy to paint with just one hand. Now I need to be careful here. I don't want to re-exaggerate those smile creases. I'll have the same problem I had earlier. All right, there's a, ouch. My hand just hit my easel on the way down. There's a drawing issue. I determined earlier that I need to take down the top of her top lip, like not that much, not as much as I just did. All right. Having done that, then let's take it back the other direction. So I'm mixing with a little Winsor Newton Series 7 brush. Nice little sharp brush. I'm going to repaint her top lip. Now, let me take a look at her color. Oh, perfect. Oops, I got it perfect and I messed it up. So bear with me, I'm still over here mixing color. All right, let's repaint that top lip. Being careful not to make that edge too sharp. That's an easy mistake to make. In fact, in all of portraiture, it's easy to over sharpen the edges of features. Does that make sense? Yeah, be careful. So even though I'm using a brush that is capable of creating razor sharp edges, I'm going to fluff it a little bit so that I'm not accidentally creating a razor sharp edge. And once again, I'm going to exaggerate the color just an infinitesimal amount. I want your lips to be, oh, it's so slightly redder than the photograph. So slight that even she won't notice. She won't say, oh, look, he made my lips redder. Okay, if I elicit that response from the client or a viewer, then I will have failed in my job, because I want it to be so subtle they just go, oh yeah, look at those lips are beautiful. That's what I want. I don't want them saying, oh look, he exaggerated the redness. Fair enough? There are a lot of things in art, I think, that fit into that degree of subtlety. We do a number of things in our paintings that we don't really want people to notice. We want them to experience the benefit of our tweaking, of our subtle tweaking, but we don't, if they notice, we've done too much. Unless, of course, they're a fellow artist, then it's possible, because an artist has a different eye than a non-artist, typically. Yeah, here's a good warning. Oh boy, be careful these nice sable brushes. Once you yield to the temptation to pick up a super fine sable or artificial fake sable brush, it's hard as dickens to force yourself to get back to a bristle brush. And the bristle brush will produce authentic brush mark strokes, which I defined earlier in this broadcast. Whereas the sable brush will not. The sable brush will create absolutely invisible brush strokes, right? Because it's so smooth, it's so perfect. So that's why, and that's also why early in my oil painting career, I didn't really start oil painting till I was about 45 years old, but don't be fooled by that. By the time I was 45, basically, I was a master in all the other mediums. It was just oil I hadn't done, because I'd been an illustrator for decades. I'd been a full-time professional artist for decades before I picked up oil painting. Okay, so don't, I'm not saying, oh, I only started painting at age 45. Yeah, technically that's true, oil painting. But no, that's not true at all. I did everything else before that. Anyway, my point is, I was trying to make a point that when forgive me, I know my head's right in your way, that when I first started oil painting, I vastly preferred the sable brushes. Why? For the very reason that I don't prefer them now. I preferred them because they behaved. They did what they were told. You could control them. They made the marks you wanted them to make. They did not have a mind of their own. All those, I'm saying the same thing over and over and over, okay? That's why I preferred, and that's why many of you early journey painters, you also prefer sable or fake sable brushes, soft brushes, again, because they do what they're told, they behave, they make perfectly predictable marks, you can control them, they don't have a mind of their own, right? And that's why you like them, that's why I like them. So there was a journey, there was a growth process in there for me, where as I graduated, as I've talked about to you guys so many times, as I graduated from the first half of my art journey to the second half. So I started oil painting in the first half of my art journey. And so I was still in the paint stuff that looks like stuff stage. Okay, I'm very glad for those years of training and practice, because look, it's made it so I can paint stuff that looks like stuff. But in the second half of our journey, our priorities change. And that's where things like brush strokes become important. Because now I want to paint stuff that looks like paint. Now, portraits, hang on here. Portraits are sort of a unique category, especially when you're an intermediate portrait painter like I am. And by the way, I clearly put myself in the intermediate portrait category. Hang on, I need a little bit of this color on his lip, I think. Anyway, so I started oil painting in the first half of my art journey. First half of your journey, the goal is to paint stuff that looks like stuff. Second half of your journey, you're finally painting stuff that looks like paint, right? So again, that's why I want brush strokes that are seeable, because I want it to look like paint, not like a photograph. And again, I've said that this morning already, spent quite a bit of time talking about, I think it's not just, it is definitely artists who favor that kind of abstraction, but I think it is also the more mature art viewers among us who also prefer a human touch as opposed to the imitation of a photograph. All right, and then as I said, I don't have the energy for any more of that conversation, so I'm going to leave that right there. You see, I'm still cheating once in a while. Every once in a while I put a mark down that goes, that I can't, I don't feel like I can leave it. I have to blend it a little bit. So I am cheating. I'm still, and if this is Sargentizing a painting, this is very, very mild Sargentizing. By the way, I do have portraits in my portfolio, and you can see my website is essentially my portfolio. And you can see all my portraits at DanNelsonArt.com, all the ones that I'm proud of, that is to say. It's not all of them, but all the ones I'm happy with. And there's plenty, 60, 70 portraits. You can see, now her chin is not done yet, by the way. So and her mouth is not done. So I'm basically, whoops, other than, you know, finishing tweaks, I'm finished down to there. I didn't do much on her eyes. I'm not sure that I need to. Oh yeah, I'm going to whiten a tiny, tiny, tiny bit. I've actually got the whites of her eyes slightly darker than the photograph. And so I'm going to lighten that just, again, tiny bit. Oh, and her ear's not finished at all. So you can see that's still, I would have liked to have finished her ear on Saturday, but I just ran out of energy, so I quit on Saturday. About 10 p.m. if I remember correctly. But let's go ahead and finish her chin. Here's the photograph, and I've got the shadow of her chin coming up too high. And David, I don't know if you're still with me or not, but that might have been what you were seeing and referring to earlier. So the light on her chin needs to come down further. Let me now go back to the painting and you'll see what I'm talking about. See that? And also I need a little bit more light over here. So I'm not sure if that's what you were seeing, David, and I didn't mean to be harsh, but I sort of wanted to tell the newcomers that go ahead and, so to speak, make comments. But as I say, I say this a lot. Let me repeat it. It's worth saying. I have learned, when it comes to the tweaking photographs, as an artist, when I look at the photograph and I say to myself, it looks to me like blank, and in this case, it's usually a facial feature blank. It looks to me like, her chin might be too wide, short, narrow, whatever the word may be. When I say that as the artist, I've discovered that about 50, 60, or 70% of the time, so okay, let's just say 60% of the time, I'm wrong. That I'm seeing something real, but I'm identifying it wrongly most of the time. So if I'm that way, I'm going to think that probably the odds of my viewer watching is even lower than that. And again, not picking on anybody, but I'm trying to teach all of you, if you're watching me, that probably means you're behind me slightly in your journey, because if you're way better than me, you're probably not watching me. I know this from experience. I'll watch painters on YouTube that are behind me, so to speak, in their journey, but not a lot. If I'm going to watch somebody, I want to watch somebody who's better than me. I don't watch people that are worse so that I feel whatever, so I can build myself up. That's silly, Then I watch people that are just way different from me, like Andrew Tischler, and think, maybe I should paint like him. And I usually wake up and get over it. I do. He's good, but he's very traditional. Anyway, I don't want to sound like I'm starting to criticize somebody who's clearly a good artist. That's not my point. But he is conventional. And I've said often, I didn't set out to try to be a weird artist. It just turned out that way. It's just my journey, my evolution. I'm a very creative painter. Not all artists are creative. I said this the other day. And actually, after it came out, I reflected on it some more. I said, you know what? That's a really good point. Okay, what is? Here it is. That we all have different personalities, callings, giftings, and there are some artists who, quote unquote, learn their right way to paint early in life, and they never change. They just keep painting that same way over and over and over. And I think probably that many of those become the most proficient in that particular way of painting. It makes sense, doesn't it? Because they never evolve out of it. So they just keep doing the same thing and actually perfect it. And that is just not me. I'm not trying to be anything. I've just, as I look at myself in the rearview mirror, say, oh, you know what I am? I'm a guy who's always evolving. So that means I won't perfect any single technique because I don't stay in it long enough. But then again, a person like myself will discover and develop painting techniques that if I may call it, the conservative painter will never even dream of doing. So I'm a discoverer and I'm an explorer, inventor, discoverer, and other people are something else. And again, so I made a comparative statement a minute ago about Andrew Tischler, and and he may think he's an explorer or inventor, but not compared to me. He's very traditional. And again, I'm not saying anything bad about him. He's a very good painter. But I look at his stuff and say, man, maybe I'd have 100,000 views if I would just settle down and paint pretty pictures like Andrew Tischler. As I said, I do think about it, and then usually come to my senses and say, yep, nope, that's good for him. And every once in a while, I mean, even for me, doing a portrait, as you can see, is a departure for me, because compare this to my cityscapes, and that's quite clear. All right, I'm pretty happy with her, I think. Yeah. Now let's go back up to her mouth. I got some highlights, some shiny bits that are very tiny, but can really make a difference. I'm mixing up a very pale pink color. Again, more crazy right-handed painting. Control freak painting. Aha, now this brings up a point worth saying. When doing really tiny highlights like this, it's real easy, and this is related to Sargentizing a painting, it's real easy to get slick. Boy, that's a fine line. Generally speaking, the world of illustration, which I was an illustrator, and still am occasionally, but the world of illustration is full of slick tricks. In fact, even more than that, the world of architectural rendering, the people that do, the old-fashioned people that did real watercolor paintings of buildings that are going to be built, they do some beautiful work. But it's very formulaic and very slick-ish. There's a lot of slick, and it's a real fine. So even the little bit of highlight that I was doing there, the first stroke that I put down was like, oh, that looks great. And then I went, wait a minute, no, it's not. It looks slick. And what is slick? Contrived, artificially easy. It's hard to say. Yeah. There's got to be, this is weird, now we're getting Twilight Zone painting. There's got to be some struggle in the painting. That's one of the differences, in my opinion, between illustration and fine art. Illustration is easy and slick. All the work is hidden, taken out. Real painting, there's some struggle, there's some redo, there's some no, that's not right, let's fix that. That's still visible in the finished painting. Now, not in a William Bouguereau, and again, I love William Bouguereau. Boy, talk about Andrew Tischler being conventional or something. Let's go to an extreme and say William Bouguereau. Just sound it out. Google, if you want to look him up, Google will figure out. You just start trying to spell Bouguereau. The trick to remember in English, in French, is that all letters are silent. That's the main thing if you're learning French. In your English person, that's the first thing you have to learn. Oh, in English, in French, all letters are silent. It's a bit of a joke to help you anyway, Bouguereau, William Bouguereau, look him up. French, 1860s to 1890s. Really the zenith of a school of painting, salon painting, usually pronounced with a sneer in your lip, because that's what you were trained to have, a sneer in your voice by the art professors of the 20th century. Anyway, I love Bouguereau, and I did a Bouguereau copy. You can see it on my website. I did a Bouguereau copy right when I was just starting to do oil painting, and I'm glad I did. It was a great learning experience. But very smooth, hyper smooth. I say every once in a while, I'll tell people, everybody should do at least one hyper-realistic painting in their life. In a sense, that was mine, my William Bouguereau that I did in 1999, 98, 99, 2000, 2002, something in there somewhere. And it was a good experience. I learned a lot. I absorbed a lot, kept a lot of it with me, but moved on from it anyway. I don't know how I got onto Bouguereau, but I'm a fan. I just don't want to do it. By the way, just forgive me for, maybe you've seen people do Bouguereaus, and You can look at mine, DanNelsonArt.com, on the portrait page. It's still there. And it's a slight improvement on Brushstrokes painting. I'm trying to saying that to drive David nuts if he's still with us. I don't know if he is or not. Besides that, it's true. Brushstrokes' face, the face of the girl's a little bit weird, and I fixed the weirdness. My girl looks better than his. But I don't have to say that, do I? That's probably just bragging, isn't it? Like David says. Like David will accuse me of being humble. Not humble, in other words. He'll accuse me of being arrogant. Maybe. This part of her mouth was never quite satisfactory. There we go, getting closer. Hey, Lake. Now I lost the highlight on the top of her lip. That should be easy to catch again. Yes, definitely time to pull out the maul stick. You got that? David suggests a little white in his sparkle in his eye, and I think you're correct. Thank you for mentioning that. Oh, and she's got a dark outline for some reason around a couple of her teeth. I need to fix that. Again, the Sargentizing, which I've called this broadcast, is attempting to leave marks discernible as marks, as brush strokes, and not blend them, which is so much. My impulse, just as it is probably many of yours. Exaggerating color ever so slightly. Did I say slightly? Part of the reason, that I've got another Mark Carterism in me, even as I say that, because he is so right. One of his, you can watch it yourself. I think he calls it the most common mistake made by beginner portrait painters. I think he limits it. I think he's talking about portrait painting. And he nailed me. Oh my goodness. He nailed me exactly. He said the most common mistake made by, I think he used the term beginner portrait painters, is over edginess, over too much contrast and too sharp of an edge. So as soon as I say that, look at me, here I am. I've got this wonderful and horrible number 7 Winsor Newton Series 7 brush in my hand, which is that's the monster that makes super sharp edges. All right. Oh boy, does anybody know that portraiture takes a long time? And I've got this, all the background, I've got everything else to do, and I've already spent way more of than my budgeted time on their faces. I'm over time on their faces. Talk on it. This is going to be a nice portrait, though. This is going on my website for sure. So that's always a good thing. I'm doing these, as you probably know, at an outrageous price, $350 per person. So this is a $700 painting. Normally this is a, I forget, $2,400 painting. But I'm doing these during coronavirus crisis because I've lost a whole bunch of work, and so I need the work. Plus I want to continue to, I don't want to get lazy and lose skill by sitting around. And I need the money. So there you go. If you want me to do a portrait of you, by the way, the price has gone up. It's now $395 per face. So that would be $790 for two, or $395 for one face, which again is about 25% of my normal. Lest you think, just okay, lest you think this is, you're looking at a $700 portrait. Yes, you are, in times of crisis. I think, in fact, I thought right early in this whole crazy coronavirus craziness that I thought of the great artists in the Great Depression. I really did. It's a study. You can probably, it sounds like something that NPR would have done, or that, no, there's a name for the American Heritage Recordings or something like that. Anyway, in the Great Depression, skilled artists did all kinds of crazy things, very much like this. Very much like this. During the Depression, you could get these super skilled, and there's a lot of these people were just fresh off the boat from Germany or Italy or somewhere where they painted well. And they were essentially hobos, you know, rendered homeless and so forth by the Great Depression. And so some of these hobos were tragically skilled artists, and they worked for a pittance of what they were worth. Yep, so I actually thought about them when I decided to do this coronavirus portrait special. I'm hoping I'm not homeless yet, so hope it won't get to that point. I don't think it will. But times are tough around here. Here's a funny. A month ago now, I got an email from my mortgage company. Yeah, they sent out an email blast to everybody, to all their clients, customers, and they said something like, all right, during this, you know, stay at home, whatever, crisis period, you know, we're here for you. You know, if you need our help, give us a call. So at the moment, I didn't really need their help, but I thought, well, what the heck, let's give them a call. By the way, I'm doing a little bit more sparkle. Easy to overdo the sparkle thing, by the way, gang. Easy to overdo it. So be very, 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 very careful. I will not tell you who our mortgage company is, although I really do like them and they have good customer service. It's a very well-known, you would know the name. Anyway, I called them up, got a hold of a real person, said, well, you know, at the time I'd lost like, I think $20,000 worth of contracts. It's gone up from there now to about $35,000 worth of contracts that have fallen through. Most postponed, but some disappeared, will never happen again. Anyway, so, you know, I said, well, you know, I've lost a lot of business, and you sent me this email. You know, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to pay my mortgage every month. I'm just telling you this because I thought it was funny. So the lady on the other end said, well, you know, your mortgage is due on the 1st. Uh-huh, says I. I don't like the way this is going. says, but you understand that you have a grace period. You know, you don't have to pay any, you don't pay any fines till the 15th. And, you know, it won't impact your credit unless you go are 30 days late. In other words, she was reading me what is on the back of every single invoice we get, you know, from, in other words, here's our special deal. Oh, by the way, it's not special at all. I thought that was kind of funny. Anyway, so far we were able to pay our mortgage. So praise the Lord for that. But I'm not holding my breath. I've lost a... Anyway, I just ramble. Welcome all you. Everybody's in, some people way worse shape than we are in. But there's some people that are in less bad shape. I've gotten some delightfully trollish comments on Facebook and here and there about, you know, telling people I'll do a portrait for $350, and some people say, what? You ought to be ashamed of yourself. In times like this, people don't have $350 to throw at how good a piece of artwork is, blah, 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 blah. So, in neither case did I even have to lift a finger to defend myself because other people did it for me. But it's just funny. Probably actually a cultural, you know, a cultural thing. Somebody there that has never even thought about buying a piece of original artwork in their life. And that's all right. I mean, I don't buy much because I can't afford it. I can't even afford I said that a while ago, by the way. I can't even afford my own paintings. And it sounds like I'm being funny. I'm actually not being funny at all. It's literally true. If I finish a painting, I want it out the door. I don't want it hanging in my house because I want, doggone it, I want money for that thing. So I don't have, well, till this past year when I've pulled out of all galleries, but that's a strategic business decision, which so far is not going really well. But that was a business choice. Until then, and they're not hanging on my walls. They're stacked up and they're leaning up against the wall, behind me and up in my attic and so forth. Anyway, but I don't have any of my paintings hanging in my house. No, let me clarify. I don't have any marketable paintings. I have my old-fashioned paintings, my first half of Journey paintings hanging in my house because they are virtually unmarketable. In the photograph, her teeth actually fade as they come down because they get more transparent. They actually fade to a beautiful bluish tint. But you know what? I don't think I'm going to try to. It would be, maybe I just don't have the energy. Maybe I've gotten lazy. Her teeth here faint to it slightly darker because the lighter at the top because the light's coming from above. Anyway, but they're blue because they're transparent and the darkness in her mouth is coming through her transparent enamel, and they're lovely. She has beautiful teeth. But you wouldn't normally think of teeth going blue, would you? But they actually do. All right, gang, I think I'm going to continue to putter around with her. Again, that was a nice Sargent stroke, and so was that. And I'll probably do more of, maybe I should keep broadcasting for just a few more minutes so you can see me do, again, the last stages. I'm just about done Sargentizing her face. And then I really need to get cracking. Again, I'm over budget on this portrait, doggone it. Dedewed her ear and all the rest of the painting. I've got a mid-tone brown on my brush right now, and I'm looking for places to make even bolder what I'm calling, sort of tongue-in-cheek calling, Sargent-like strokes. put marks down and leave them is the goal. I feel like her forehead is still, even though I feel like technically it's correct, I really think it's accurately reflects the photograph. I feel like it's, my intuition says it's too flat, her forehead, so maybe this is the last thing I'll do before I end this broadcast. I'm trying to mix up this original color I put up here. Yeah, there we go. Just a slightly lighter shade of it. There we go, that's better. It's so subtle, I'm sorry, you guys probably can't even see that. Yeah. Oh, and she has that same color again, because it's blue, of course, because they're getting blue from the sky above them. I was starting to talk a while ago about the challenging lighting in this. And it's only challenging mentally if you're trying to make sense of it. If you're not worrying about making sense of it, you just copy what's in the photograph. That's how you really paint anything, right? You just look and copy. Like, for instance, years ago, I loved doing automotive paintings, and a fellow artist said, "Wow, you do chrome so well. How do you do that?" And it seemed like a funny statement. I'm not going to tell you who said that, but it seemed like a strange statement because it's easy to do chrome from a photograph. All you do is copy the photograph. You get into trouble when you open your filing cabinet, and in your filing cabinet you have this or that image that represents a chrome. Anyway, the same is true. By the way, I'm changing. Whoops, let me expand so you can see I'm moving. I'm redrawing her back a little bit. What was I saying? Something about, oh yeah, the drawing, the lighting on the photograph is challenging to one's logic because it's a professional photograph, and the professional photographer, I can tell it's professional or very, very skilled amateur, one or the other, but somebody knew what to do, because they used a fill flash outdoors. So the light on their faces, there's two light sources: natural light, diffuse blue light from above, and the cool white flash, not directly, but bounced off the photographer's little flippy light thing. So if you start thinking if I start thinking logically about what the light on their faces should be doing, I get messed up because of the bounce flash, because of the fill, sometimes called the fill flash. Because of the fill flash, we're not experiencing what we would expect. So then sometimes I get little mental conflicts between what my brain says. Well, wait a minute, the light's up here, there should be a shadow like under their nose, and so on and so on and so on and so forth. Like the sparkle in their eye, but in fact the sparkle in their eye is dead center because of the flash, fill flash that the photographer used. Anyway, so as long as I don't fall down the rabbit hole of logic and just stick with pure observation, which, by the way, I've tried at times in the past to invent lighting in a portrait, and it was a disaster. Just go with what you see. Okay, I'm almost done. So let me continue just a little bit more. light on her, on the folds of her neck. Let me see, back to matching color up here. Oh, way too yellow. No, the bad part about broadcasting in this manner is that after however long it's been, an hour and a half or whatever, you guys can probably, from that distance, you probably can't even see the difference between her face now, the way it is now, and the way it was when we started out. Well, you could, I think, because it's got better highlights now. But as far as the sargentizing aspect, I'm afraid that it's so subtle, you probably can't see it. But trust me, I'm just going to say, trust me, I can see it. It looks, there's a more energetic stroke on the on her face. Stroke in the plural, all the strokes are more energetic, more effective, more painterly, more fun, more energy. And I'm happy to say now, and I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true, as you know it, because you've been with me, the old time, been with me enough times when I'm not terribly happy with what I've produced. At the moment, I'm quite happy with these faces. I think I've met, it's a dead-on likeness. The flesh tones are believable. Little orange right there. I remember making that orange color. Now I'm second guessing it, but that was an easy fix. Of course, I will. I have the luxury of not delivering the painting today, so I have the luxury of, staring at it a little while. I'm going to finish their bodies and do the background. Hope to God I finish all that today, because I've got another portrait leaning up, half done, behind me, and I need the money. Wait, hang on. This little edge that I did right here, that's a Mark Carter mistake. The mistake that he points out. And I did it with a Winsor Newton Series 7, That's the danger with those dang perfect brushes. All right, I've been droning on forever and ever. Thinker, Dan, how do you like Charles Mavalli? Well, I'll have to look him up. I can't wait. I will. I don't know. I've probably seen his stuff, but I don't know it right off the top of my head. And David, 8 months on yours. Yeah, I don't have that kind of luxury, but Light blue, why would you want to sell any of your work? To pay my mortgage. It's real easy. Yes, I need money to survive. That's exactly right. Plus, frankly, in light blue, you ask a good question. I say some on one of my websites, or said somewhere, 3 forces have conspired to make me the artist I am. Okay, 3 things. Number 1, the joy of creating. Yay! So much fun. Number 2, clients with deadlines. That's not quite as much fun. And number 3, the threat of starvation. Those 3 things. And I'm convinced, there's no question in my mind. Here I am at age 66, still working like a maniac. There's no question in my mind. If I were independently wealthy or comfortable, financially comfortable, I wouldn't work as hard as I do. There's no question. I've asked myself that many times. If I didn't have to, would I work till 10 o'clock at night? The answer is heck no. So that pressure has definitely made me a better artist, because I have to make a living. Now, I would like it. Would I like it to change? Heck yeah. Would I like to spend the last season of my life? Well, I'm not looking to coasting in, I'd like to be more like Maxfield Parrish, finish my last painting at age 95 and die a week later, something like that. I'm not volunteering to die at 95 even, but he did a pretty good job. All right, thanks for helping me. You guys, you understand, don't you? Partly, I'm using you. You know that, right? I'm using you because your presence keeps my nose to the grindstone. When I'm not broadcasting, I got time to get a cup of coffee, get a little snack, go to the bathroom, wash my hands. Wash my hands is a good idea. Speaking of which, should have done this before now. I'm trying to get in the habit of having some kind of, hand cleaner wipe at all my art stations so that I can do this periodically. Anyway, I use you because you help me stay focused better. So thank you very much. I'm tickled with that. Right now, I'll look at it. I'll make changes. I think, could I exaggerate the pink in her cheek a little bit? Yeah, probably could. Also in her nose. Yeah, probably could. But if I get struck by lightning right now, I'll sign it and I'm done. All right. After I get struck by lightning, I have just enough energy to go up and sign the painting. All right. All right, thanks, David. I appreciate your company very much and your input and your thought. Thanks. I did get a little more light in his eye, like you said. All right, bye-bye. I probably will broadcast later today, but don't know. I hope you all have a great week getting back to work. Bye-bye.